I'm a wonderful citizen. How do you think I've got this house and where I'm living now if I wasn't? They've given me this council. We've got the best, this is the best little city on earth. How do I know? I've been everywhere else. I'm here now, right on the family patch. Yeah, I know where it is. I've been. Nobody can tell me anything. I don't read Daily Mirror and Sun. I go and have a look. I go and have a look, and I've lived in the forests of North America. I've lived in the outback of the Ivory Coast. I've lived in India and Russia. I had my breakfast in Moscow and my tea in Wood Street, Nick. Yeah, I've been about a bit. I'm the only man in the history of mankind that has swum across the Straits of Johor. I had to avoid a police launch. It was either that or Changi, Nick. They've got me passport in Singapore. Yeah, I swam it. Yeah, nobody's ever done it before, not because of the currents or anything like that, nothing like that. It's sharks. Not shark infested, but none of the locals go paddling. Yeah, I swum it. I know about sharks, yeah. I'm 6'3" and 16 stone, 200 weight, yeah, I'm swimming. These pumps, these were hanging around my neck when I done it, yeah. I thought, well, Jaws, how they condition them, I know how they condition people, yeah, Jaws, boom, 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 yeah. They're just flying about. You've got to know how job works. Your sharks will have a look at me and think, yeah, I know how to do them. You punch them right in the fucking ear hole and they swim off.
Hello, welcome to podcast 11. I'm joined today by the best-selling author, Jamie Boyle, and we're going to be discussing a very interesting fellow, a cult figure and a bit of a legend, Paul Sykes, the fighter and intellectual philosophizer from Wakefield. Jamie has wrote numerous books on him, kind of thing, and we're going to be kind of decoding Paul Sykes and the myths around Paul Sykes, just basically talking about Paul Sykes, answering a few questions. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much, mate.
No worries. Thank you very much for coming down. A very interesting character, Paul Sykes. What do you think the allure is and why so many people kind of thing are fascinated by him?
2012, one of my mates texted me and he said, when you get a minute, go on YouTube and type in Paul Sykes. So, name never meant anything to me. And I watched it in what can be only described as an angry chuckle brother. And I was just like, what the fuck have I just watched? I need to know more about him. So basically, cut a long story short, I walked into the book, walked into the documentary, met everyone. Going to be releasing my third and final book on him in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, it's Paul Sykes. I've got a lot to be thankful for because he's put me on the map.
What started you on the odyssey? To find out about Paul Sykes? Was it just a fascination with him?
I've always been interested in true crime. You know, Jack the Ripper, the Craze. And I wanted to know more about him. I must have watched that documentary about 108 times. Read the book, and basically for 3 years, I was researching and trying to, find out much about him. And after 2015, I just went, here, hold my pint. I'll fucking do it myself. So I just walked into Wakefield, and obviously, I say often, like, when Salman Rushdie written Satanic Verses in 1988 and everyone wanted to kill him, I'm probably not everyone's favourite person in Wakefield because they're seeing me as digging the ghost of Paul Sykes up. But listen, people are obsessed with him.
How is he viewed is he revered or hated, or is it a bit of each kind of thing? Do people think of that?
I'm getting more hate for this book than I did with the other first two.
Really?
Yeah, massively. There's not a week goes by when someone doesn't message me, want to fight with me. Old men, young kids. But I've spoke to Ricky Gervais, Robbie Williams is obsessed with Paul Sykes, Jamie Carragher, Bob Mortimer, the League of Gentlemen, some serious, like, really big names are just obsessed with him, and they want to know why. He just wasn't your average guy, and he's probably, I was blown away. I've just become obsessed with him. And I've written 3 books, and then obviously the film's going to happen next year.
He's something of an enigma, Paul Sykes, and he's not just your kind of communal guard and hard man who knocks people out kind of thing. He had many layers to him. He was like an academic, wasn't he, kind of thing, and well read.
You know, people think the swimming of sharks was lies. It wasn't. That actually happened.
Yeah.
It was 1985. He had O levels. He had A levels. He had an open degree. Got it in 1982. But he just had a passion for punching people's lights out. And he was one, you know, absolutely unbelievable character. You've seen it yourself. You know, people think, who's this crazy guy on YouTube punching sharks? But he did some serious, major, great achievements. But obviously that people don't remember that. Did
he pick up most of his accolades inside?
Yes,
most of
all his education came from inside. Paul basically, he was a dropout at school, assaulting teachers. He was kicked out, 14-year-old, 15 I think it was. His dad was a sadistic brute. I did a podcast yesterday, and I think I described it as basically be careful what you wish for, because his dad wanted him to be a boxer, wanted him to be a fighter. When he got to that age, 14, 15-year-old, he couldn't control him.
Really, it was like knocking men out.
He was knocking people out for fun. And when he was 17, he went Wakefield prison, but that was for over 21s. But he was just that much of the British prison systems couldn't control him. He was just one crazy loose cannon, and he just caused mayhem everywhere he went.
At what age did he write Sweet Agony?
He written it in 1988, so that would have made him, let me think, about 42. He released it in 1990. That won the Kestrel Award. I've read it twice, and it's a fabulous. It is a really, really good read. There's details on top of details in there.
It's an amazing book. I mean, like I say, most of your Erdman books are like you know what you're getting kind of thing, but his turns of phrase and it's so fantastically well written. I think one of the great tragedies is Paul Sykes. He only wrote one book.
That's exactly what I've just put in my book, Final Agony. He basically only done that English class because he fancied the teacher in there.
So he only started writing the book.
But he only written one book because he had when he was in prison. Obviously, when he was out, there was too many distractions for him: women, alcohol, beating people up, debt collecting. So it is a really crying shame. It's probably Paul Sykes' biggest crime that he ever did. Yeah,
it was actually a fantastic book kind of thing. Did he not make any money out of that book?
Yeah, he did. 10,000 copies were printed. He wanted to get another 2,000, and the guy, Peter Lofthouse from Pontefract, he wouldn't do any more. And Paul's sister told me that Paul Sykes attacked him, assaulted him. Paul punched everyone. I was with the filmmakers of Paul Sykes at large a couple of years back. Roger Greenwood and Nick Lord. He even hit them.
Really? Well, during the
when they were filming,
he turned on them.
That took years, and they got 30 years. They got 30 hours of footage for it. And obviously we've only seen 56 minutes.
So what's happening to all this other footage?
I'm trying to dig it out at the minute. There is other footage there.
Right, it's still recorded. It's in good condition. It's just like
Roger Greenwood told me he has it in his house, but he won't release it.
Is there any reason Is there any reason for that?
I think it'll come. I think it'll resurface when the film comes out. It's being made next year by Western Edge Pictures. There's a guy who's playing Paul Sykes. I'll tell you off air, but this guy is a half-rob. He's been in some really top things, and he's a spitting double of Sykesy. And he said to me, you know, he's been practicing his Yorkshire accent. He's from Oxford or somewhere like that.
Say.
And basically, he said the social justice of it all, you know, Paul Sykes, the young kids, Johnny Nelson said to me, and Tyson's uncle, Peter Fury, they said, them kids used to beat him up and crack eggs on his head on a daily basis and set fire to him and torture him.
Yeah.
He said, they would never have had any inkling, the fear, once upon a time, that man could install.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have even looked at him sideways. He was one scary bastard.
Yeah. And it was like, we interviewed Brian Cottrell last week kind of thing, and he was saying about being a kid and being bullied kind of thing. And is it just something happened in this snap? This snap, and once they find out, it's like the genie's out the fucking bottle. And
yeah, it's I'm writing my 17th book at the minute in 3 month. Once Upon a Time, T-Side, Brian Cockrell, Lee Duffy, and you know, I've done your books on Dominic Negus, Roy Shaw, Paul Sykes, Brian Cockrell. Yeah, they always, the one thing in common, they've all been bullied.
Really?
And basically, society, they become a product of their own environment.
Yeah.
You know, and Sykes, he was a really sadistic streak. One of his favourite things from what he used to do, he'd walk into a pub and he'd say, you're buying me a pint, you're buying me a pint, you're buying me. And what I used to do as well is, if he wanted to humiliate someone, he'd make him stand up on a pool table to sing Humpty Dumpty or Bar Bar Black Sheep. And people say, was that cruel? But he's also, I shouldn't probably laugh, but he's quite funny.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's quite, yeah, he was just, you know, next year when the film's coming out, he's going to be as big as your Bronsons and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, because up until 2012, when I come along, if you look at Paul Sykes, if you type in his name, the city of Wakefield had kind of forgot about him, if you like, tried to not mention him. So I come along, everyone's doing books on him, making songs on him, you know, and yeah, it's just basically, you know, exploded. Sykes Mania is going to come next year.
How are they going to treat him in the film? Do you have any idea what vibe they're going for? I mean, the Bronson one was quite arty and Clockwork Orangey kind of thing. And have you any idea what it goes up to?
Yeah, it's I've read the official synopsis for the film. It's going to be filmed in 1989. And to be honest, by the sounds of it, it's going to sound a bit like Rita Sue Bob 2. It's going to sound like a very 80s Yorkshire. They are negotiating at the minute with a top, probably the major band in the 80s.
Okay.
To do the full soundtrack. So that's how big, you know, the budget is over 2 million for that film.
So it's not going to be like a fucking little porky film. It's going to be like a big deal.
It's going to be a big, you know, and obviously the guy who's playing Paul, he's been in some major things. So it's going to be, I don't know how good it'll be, but you know, the budget will be there. So it's going to take 6 to 9 months to film.
Really, yeah. So, when will it go to? Will it go to the bitter end, or will it end like kind of?
It's going to start from 1989 to his dying day.
Oh, really? So it'll take you. Was he actually found dead in a skip? Is that?
No, I used to sleep in a skip.
All right, yeah.
He was found in a bus shelter in Normanton, which is a place just outside Wakefield. He was in a coma for 6 days, and he was nil by mouth. So basically, if he'd have had a glass of water, that could have killed him. And yeah, he was shouting to people, "Get me a fucking drink." Yeah. His sister was there. His wife, ex-wife, Kath, she was there. And yeah, he knew he was going to die. He said the drink's got me, hasn't he? So he knew he was staring death in the face. He was probably about 10 stone when he died.
What kind of happened after the John L. Gardner fight? Could he not have done a rematch or tried again, or had he just give up then? He thought, fuck it, I've tried it.
He fought one more time in Lagos in March 1980, and he got knocked out in 56 seconds. He never trained for it. It was just the money, basically.
Yeah.
He then retired. He was going to fight Lenny McLean on the unlicensed scene.
Yeah.
Basically, he had a fight with Terry Mitchell in Leeds. Sykes got a cut about a week before.
Okay.
Alex Steen, the old promoter, had paid Sykes, so he lost all his money. And he was back in prison in 1981. But he took a contract out on a union man from Blackpool, and he got 5 years for that.
Really, yeah.
So that basically ended his boxing career. But Paul Sykes always tried to get in touch with John Gardner and say, look, Dennis Flint's going to put 100 grand up who'll fight in a field, winner take it all. And basically, John Gardner used to say, I beat you once, I don't need to beat you again.
Yeah, yeah.
The screws used to wind him up because, he was a coward, he turned his back. And many of the screws used to shout, John Gardner, and he never ever lived that down till his dying day.
Yeah. Do you think in his book, Sweet Agony, he talked about like he thought that he was being drugged before the fight? Have I dreamt that?
No, what it was, there was a doctor called Dr. McGill.
Yeah.
And he was a doctor to the underworld. When Lee Duffy was shot, he was the guy who treated him. His knee, Tommy Harrison, took him. He was friends with Mad Frankie Fraser. He was on remand himself. He was a doctor. He'd be out.
Struck off kind of thing, but like underworld dog.
He'd be out in pubs fighting. Alcoholic. He's an ex-boxer. He wasn't like your average doctor. And what he did do, Delroy Showers told me, he was on pure oxygen. So that basically weakened him. So for some reason, and for that fight, he was 14 stone something. With all Paul's other fights, he's been like 15 stone 10.
Yeah.
So basically, he overtrained for it. But he was drinking whiskey 3 weeks before the fight.
Yeah.
He just thought. He basically thought he was going to go in and knock him out. And when John Gardner was stood there for after the first 3 rounds, he ran out of ideas, and then obviously he turned his back.
Yeah. And then after that, what happened after that? What did he? Like you said he got in trouble with the police, and then it was just downward spiral.
Paul Sykes, he was classed as the hardest man in Britain in the 70s, 80s, the most difficult prisoner. By September 1989, he'd done 21 years out of 26. But after 1993, 1994, the drink had finished him, and then he started losing fights. Brian Cockle went looking for him, and Paul was just sat in the pub, sat drinking. And Dave Garsard, Paddy Conroy and Brian went to see him, and basically Paul just sat drinking, smiled and went, no, fuck it. And he started losing fights, but basically he become a tramp around the stroke of the millennium. Wow. And that's what it was like Cinderella. Basically, when the clock struck midnight, Paul had a lot of mental health. He was in a Stanley Royd hospital for 6 months, section 2001. He gave up drink. He was on them tablets that George Best was on, that if you drink you're violently sick. But basically from 2002 to 2007, a gush of wind would have knocked him over.
Yeah.
So that was when people went looking for him, and all the people, his dads and granddads, they're bullied. They took their revenge on him.
The kids kind of thing. Do you think kind of thing that he had some mental health issues? He was actually disturbed and undiagnosed for that, why he was so volatile. He had mental health
I spoke to his sister, and she said to me, her exact words were, I would have loved a normal brother who went to work 9 to 5, but I didn't have that. I had this oddball. I had this violent oddball, and he wasn't right from start to finish. The thing is with Paul Sykes, he was been in all these prisons, right?
Yeah.
I think, without a doubt, he was mentally ill. But in the 70s, it wasn't much spoken about. But he'd been tested by all these kind of doctors, and he passed. So on paper, you'd have to say no. But I think unquestionably, it's like Lee Duffy, Paul Sykes, Roy Shaw. They did what normal people just don't do them kind of things.
No.
And Paul Sykes was far from normal.
What age? I read the book, your first one, Unfinished Agony. He used to go and sit in the park with a stupid hat on, didn't he?
Yeah.
On a bench, and then when people walk past, when gangs of lads would come past laughing at him, he'd go and he'd kick fuck out of them all, kind of thing.
Yeah, he would love to just go in pubs and he was charismatic, he was flamboyant, he was just this crazy one-off character. And he was very, very different. John Spenceley, his mentor, said to me, he was sat in the nightclub one day with this big fucking stupid hat on. Really ridiculous, biggest hat you've ever seen. So all these young lads come up to him and started taking the piss, and he picked one of them up by the balls and hurt him that much that he was bleeding.
Fucking hell.
He was one really deeply disturbed, violent man. He was an expert at violence.
And that was his father. Was his father so cruel and sadistic to him?
His dad, in my opinion, this 21st century, Paul would have been took into care. He used to beat him up with the belt, 5-year-old. He'd come up to Paul, 4-year-old, and just hit him in the belly and say, "There you go, son, that'll make you a man." His mum, she comes across like, not like she was, but she was they were a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
Her mum was like a man. He stands 9 feet. She used to bray Paul with like glass bottles.
She was kind of strange looking on that documentary.
Yeah, a lot of people said Bo Selector.
I was just gonna.
Yeah.
You took the fucking words out of my mouth. We have to watch what you're saying.
She was emotionally detached. Kay, Paul's sister, said to me, my mum, she'd sit there drinking a cup like that, but so Walter would think it was like tea or coffee when really it was whiskey.
Yeah.
And she'd say to Paul, she'd say to Kay, "I don't love you, it's our Paul I love." So they were a really, really strange setup.
Yeah.
And obviously, Paul Sykes was. I spoke to his best friend once, and he described it. He said Paul wasn't born; he was made. He was made like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
The beatings, all the batterings off his dad, and they had a massive, deeply profound effect on him. And obviously, you've seen what it was in life.
The results kind of thing.
Yeah.
But his father experienced karma kind of thing.
His dad was he was an ex-army sergeant. He used to work in Wandsworth prison for around 10 years. People think it was Wakefield. It wasn't. And he was just a typical old screw, really sadistic. And he was a really violent man. He used to beat Paul's mother up most nights for anything.
Yeah.
He was a bad guy, Walter Sykes.
Is it alright if we take a break? I've got a stingy eye. Hello, sorry about that. My eye was stinging, so I've got a bit of tissue with water on, kind of thing. I just thought I'd tell you. It's off. I shouldn't be showing you that. It's off camera. It's not very professional. I'm here with Jamie Boyle, the author, who's wrote 3 books about Paul Sykes. So when did Paul Sykes? How did Paul Sykes at large come about? I mean, there's so many herdmen in country. How was he singled out, kind of thing, to be on a documentary?
Do you know, a lot of people think it was Roger Greenwood that discovered him. It actually wasn't. It was a guy called Fred Dinage, and now he's
the television quiz, the quiz man.
That was who discovered Paul Sykes.
Right.
So basically, he do you know that guy who interviewed him after his fight, saying what's next, and he said
shit a bust.
No, that was Roger Greenwood. Fred Dinage is the guy that says, so what next, and he says, my second fight, 100 birds, like Joe Bugner and all that.
Yeah.
So basically, he was close to Paul Sykes, and he contacted Roger Greenwood, and he said, listen, this was like 1977, 1978, and he was like, listen, you've got to meet this guy. He is comedy gold. He's going to be one unbelievable documentary. So that's how it happened. And Roger Greenwood used to go to I used to go and see Paul Sykes in Nottingham prison, all these prisons, and he told me, he said the Screws would let Sykes have cannabis inside because basically a mellowed, stoned Paul Sykes was easy to deal with. They used to give him the like Gactyl as a liquid kosh.
Oh really?
Yeah. There's a documentary called Danger Men. I don't know if you haven't seen it. It was only just me and my publishers. We dug out a couple of years back. It was never aired, and it's on YouTube. And you can see Paul Sykes sat on his bed, and he's heavily sedated.
Really? Yeah.
He had that all the time. Yeah.
They don't do that anymore. Is it unethical that they still do the liquid kosh?
I don't know. I would imagine so. Yeah.
So that's how it was discovered, kind of thing through.
Yeah. There. And that documentary was aired December the 4th, 1990, and what does it had millions and millions of viewers.
Did it kind of did it initially do well, or is it like a YouTube kind of rediscovery?
No, it was massive at the time, and years later they wanted to do a part 2, but this is when Paul was living on the streets and he wasn't coherent. They wanted to do one on Dennis Flint, and yeah, it's sad because obviously the only footage of Dennis Flint's at 3.5 minutes, and I would have lost a limb to meet him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he was one unbelievable character.
He kind of reminded me of the 70s actor Peter Wingard.
Well,
Jason
Bob
King.
Bob Mortimer's done comedy sketches on Dennis Flint.
Yeah.
It's he was unbelievable. Roger Greenwood said I purposely did it where, on the camera you hear hello, hello, hello. Then you see Dennis with his wig and his cigar and his gold, his black shirt. Then you see the desk, and it was like, and people are just like, what the fuck? Do you know what I mean?
Like a villain, the Bond villain.
Yeah, but that was done on purpose, like that, so people seen him, heard him, seen him, and then the desk. That desk today is in Lincoln.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's still about.
What happened to the house? Did his family still have that house?
No, it's a load of flats now. On in the front garden there's a bench with a plaque, and there's a saying on it, something like, Dennis was here, gone, waiting to greet you. So I'll send it to you tonight. Yeah. But he was unbelievable, and I'm talking to his family. I'd love to do a Dennis Flint book, because he was never a criminal. Never a criminal.
Was he not a gang? Was he not like an underworld tower?
No. He had a lot of connections though. He used to give Sykes a lot of jobs, but he made his money in cars in Hong Kong.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. He was about 68, 65. He wasn't that old when he died.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died in September 2001.
How old was he in the doc at large?
About 55.
55, yeah.
But he was a massive character. He would sit there drinking whiskey all day. He loved Pavarotti. What else? He played golf every day. But he was ridiculously successful, and he had all the money in the world. He loved the women as well.
How did they get a relationship? Was it just he met Paul Sykes through debt collecting?
Yeah, they were really good friends. He had a garage. He had a garage in Wakefield, and I spoke to women. He'd one person, I won't name her, but she was with Paul Sykes, and when Paul was in prison, Dennis would meet her in a nightclub and he'd try it on behind Paul's back. He was ruthless. Dennis was like the ultimate ladies man. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I would have loved to have met him. I'd have been starstruck if I'd have met Dennis Flint.
Yeah. It seemed like a character kind of thing. Do you know in your books, is there lots of stuff you've had to leave out for, or you probably couldn't talk about? Is there stuff you can't even talk about on here, what you had to leave out of your books? Or
massive amounts. Some of the Sykes family have had a go at me. Some are in it. His sister's in it, his niece is in it, 2 of his sons are in it. But then some are against it, and you can't please everyone. But, his sister told me, some stories, and you're just like, I can't even put that in. I can't even put my
Yeah.
name to that.
Yeah.
You know, he was friends with Jimmy Savile. Like,
I was going to ask
really,
you,
really close.
I was going to ask you, how did that come about, lad?
Debt collecting.
But why would Savile be debt collecting when he was a BBC personality?
Jimmy Savile was obviously, you know, the obvious.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Tommy Miller, Tommy Miller used to use Paul Sykes for debts. Dennis Flint did, and Jimmy Savile did. He would send him left, right, and centre. Yeah, they were really, really good friends. Paul would often go to his flat in Scarborough, and they were like really close friends.
Was Savile a bit of a gangster, and quite a bit of an underworld figure, Savile?
Do you know what? Jimmy Savile could really have a fight. He was a wrestler.
Yeah, he could do a bit like, yeah.
He was fit as hell, and he had a nasty side. But you know, I'm with Lbry Showers next week, and he told me some stories, and
About that thing, yeah.
yeah, they were really, really close friends, and you know, God only knows what they got up to.
Well, you know, it doesn't take a fucking genius.
Yeah.
To work out. What was Sykes' relationship with Lbry Showers? How did he get to know Lbry Showers? Is it prison thing?
Yeah, they met in Hull Prison, the early 70s. Lbry is about 5'5", never took a drug in his life, never drunk in his life. Probably, I meet a lot of interesting people with my work, and Lbry Showers is probably the most interesting man I've ever met in my entire life. I'm with him next week. I'll try and get him on here for you.
You said that'd be great. That if you want to come on, Lbry, we can pay your
expenses. He speaks 6
expenses.
different languages, right?
6 yeah.
I've been in his company last couple of years, and he'll be on the phone and he'll just break out into Russian. He'll just break out into German, and you're just like, wow. You know, he's openly gay.
Yeah.
Well, bisexual, I think Lbry is. He has his women and all this, and yeah, you know, I'm trying. He's 50-50 about doing a book, but I'm with his brother next week.
Yeah. Is he still an active businessman?
No, Lbry, he was a millionaire. He had the Bentley and everything. And he said to me, he said, I'm richer now than, you know, it's all been took off him. And he said, I'm richer now because I'm not poisoning the state. And he's embarrassed, you know, with his past. But he was a really well-connected man. Yeah. Lbry Showers has 46 kids.
Fucking hell.
He had a lot of wealth.
That's some CSA there, isn't it? You won't get rid of your wealth,
I often get kids from all over the world messaging me, can you get me in contact with our dad? Denmark and everything.
Yeah.
But they were really, really close. Paul and Lbry. Lbry's 70 next month. Paul Sykes would have been 74, just gone. And yeah, there's about 4.5 years between them, but Paul looked up to Lbry. And Lbry said we were brother from another mother. And yeah, what an incredible character he is.
Yeah. This has been kind of a strange odyssey for you, hasn't it? This started out as a fascination and a hobby. What's turned into a bigger profession of a writer.
I just wanted, you know, if I'd never watched Paul Sykes at large, I would never ever have thought about doing a book. So that, you know, I started doing it, and I've become like bestseller, 7-time bestseller. And them 2 Sykes books were like beating Mike Tyson, beating Jimmy Tibbs, beating, and I thought, I'm just a little chancer, just blagging my way through life. And yeah, it just went mental. So if it wasn't for Paul Sykes, I would never have you know, went on to do the things I've done. And touch wood, there's 100 books in me.
Fair play. What was your profession before? You have normal job kind of thing?
Yeah, I was a doorman, I was a forklift driver, I was a labourer, you know, car park attendant. You know, I'm a nobody. And
nobody. We don't have nobody. There's nothing wrong with
you know, but basically, I'm just a quiet family man. And I did whatever I needed to do to provide for my for my family.
Fair play to you kind of thing. But in a way, you owe Paul Sykes a bit of a debt, really, because he kind of changed your life, really, didn't he? In some respects.
Yeah, you know, my publisher rang me. When was it? That first book came out on the 10th anniversary of Paul's death. Right. So. Purpose. Yeah. About 3 months after, Warcry Publishing contacted me. You're not going to fucking believe this. I was like, what? Western Edge Pictures have been in touch. They want to buy the rights for your books to make it a film and a documentary. And I was like, oh, piss off. Put it down. And I didn't believe him for about 4 hours. And I was like, oh, fuck off. You don't just... Seriously. And he went, no, that's true. They're going to make a millions of pounds of film. And Sweet Agony, Unfinished Agony, Further Agony, and then Final Agony, Bobby merged into a script. And the Paul Sykes film's going to be going to start next year. It's going to be made in Leeds, Pontefract, and Wakefield.
So are you going to write the screenplay, or are they just going to take the
No, it's written by
the raw material?
It's written by Vaughan Civil and Leo Bill. They're quite famous. What they've done, what have they done? They made the Joe Calzaghe documentary, Oscar Pistorius film. They're doing something at the minute with Billy Piper. So that they made a horror called Prevenge.
Right.
So they're like a proper company, and they're basically, Vaughan is absolutely obsessed with Paul Sykes. Yeah. I spoke to his secretary, and she said, he'll walk in a Yorkshire accent. He's Welsh, but he's got a Yorkshire accent on. What they like to do on CAF and all this. Do you know what I mean? He's just like. It's a film he'd probably do for free. He just wants to bring Paul Sykes back to life. And I was talking to the actor who's going to play Sykes, and I said, "You're the double of Paul Sykes." And he went, "It's funny you should say that, because Vaughan Civil's just rang me up and offered me the part." He said, "I'm going to make the movie, and you're going to play Paul Sykes." This guy's about 42 now. Paul Sykes was 43 when the film starts in 1989. So this guy, he's 6 foot. He's going to put weight on. He's going to do the boxing, and it's going to be that would be Leicester Square.
So where was Paul? Had he just lost to John L. Gardner in '89? Is that where
he lost? He lost to John L. Gardner in the June of 1979.
All right.
He was going to fight Lenny McLean in the November of '79. People go on and on and say Lenny McLean would have beat him. Listen, Lenny McLean had 15 unlicensed fights. He lost 6, and he was knocked out 5 times.
Really?
Yeah. All in the first round, I think. And basically, he was beaten by pub fighters, like a bad level.
Yeah.
So what would have happened basically when Paul Sykes pulled out the week before, when he had his cut? Kevin Paddock, who was really just a blown up fat middleweight, took his place, and he beat Lenny McLean 8 rounds on points.
Right.
So if Kevin Paddock, who was really just a blown up middleweight, beat Lenny McLean, what would a fully fledged 6'3" Paul Sykes would have done?
Yeah.
I asked Neil Malpass this, and I asked John L. Gardner this, and John L. Gardner can't stand Paul Sykes, and he said there'd been 1 round. He said there's fucking levels above, So you'd always get people, you'd have beat him and not, and it was just, I can't even take that question seriously. It was just levels above, You got to look on paper, and Sykes had contested for the British and the Commonwealth heavyweight pro title. Million miles away from fighting for some unlicensed governor title, Mickey Mouse title. Do you know what I mean? So Sykes would have absolutely annihilated him. It'd have been 1 round.
So it was like a natural street fighter, but it could also box your head off.
Sykes had everything, because not only could he box, he was ridiculously strong as well.
Yeah.
Obviously you had Brian Coughlin last week.
Yeah.
And he's there's probably, he fought Lee Duffy. Brian couldn't have beat Lee Duffy in a fight, in a boxing match. When Brian went to when he went to meet Paul Sykes, he said, I wasn't going to stand dancing about. Even though he was probably past his best at 93, 94 then. He said, you're not going. I wasn't going to stand Lord Marcus of Queensberry rules.
Yeah.
I was going to grab him. And Sykes was on that documentary. I asked Brian what he was lifting, and it was something like £400 or something like that. And I said, was that good for his age? Because he was 43 at the time. He said, it's good for any age.
Yeah.
So, you know, Sykes, he could box. He was ridiculously strong. And he had that nasty streak as well. He wouldn't think nothing. He come to stay in a hotel in Middlesbrough and he bit the night porter. And one thing Paul Sykes was terrible for as well, the police told me, he would spit at people.
Really, yeah.
So he had the really fucking nasty, vindictive, bad streak. And he would do anything to you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and from the ages of, let me think, when did he spar Joe Fraser? 1973, so that would have made him 27 to 43, 44, 1991. That was his peak years. And yeah, he would have been one man you just wouldn't have wanted.
Did his sadistic streak get worse as he got older, or would you say he mellowed?
When he was a tramp, when he was this tramp for the last 5 years of his life, you know, I spoke to police officers, and although he couldn't fight anymore, he would spit at people.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he would abuse people. He would stand and shout at the cars. Yeah, he was a nasty old bastard until the day he died, but he couldn't fight anymore.
And he got an ASBO from Leeds Town Centre. Is it Leeds Town Centre he got an ASBO?
No, it was Wakefield. It was August the 2nd, 2003. You know, he used to go drinking in what's it called, Dewsbury. And my mate used to see him in Bradford, and he said, "Oh, Paul, why do you know I'm barred out of Wakefield?" And he was like, "Oh, which pub are you barred out of?" Thinking he was going to say, you know,
Lamb and Trumpet.
Yeah, the Elephant Tusk or something like that. Which why are you bad out, Paul? All of it. Do you know what I mean? So literally, the city of Wakefield just couldn't cope with him anymore. And yeah, it's, you know, towards the end of his life, although he couldn't fight, he was still a nightmare. And when Paul Sykes died, it was an end of an era for Wakefield. They'll never ever again will they have such a character,
Flamboyant,
you know.
A flamboyant figure.
Huge character, you know, and people are obsessed with him and want to know what was he about.
He used to go into bakeries and piss on loaves. And
Yeah,
he'd walk in the shop and have a piss on the bread.
Yeah,
is that one of the things he used to do?
Yeah, Paul's sister said to me, he'd go into Sainsbury's and just piss on the bread, you know, or he'd just.
I don't think it's worth pissing on, to be honest.
You know, it's he'd walk in and just pick a kind of special rope.
Yeah.
And many shops used to have this policy, you know, where they put 2% of your stock is damaged or shoplift. You know, if Paul Sykes come in and helped himself, it's fine. Paul Sykes has been in. Do you know what I mean? So it's never stop him, never ask what he's doing, just let him do what he wants to do, because he'll be gone in a minute.
Do you think he was a self-destructive character, and it was always on the cards that he would end up in that way, kind of thing?
Yeah, he. I don't think there'll be anyone on this planet again who caused so much mayhem, destruction, chaos. He was just bad to the core, and you know, he was highly intelligent, but he always knew best. He lived by his own rules, and you couldn't tell him nothing because he always say shut up. And you know, that was obviously, you know, he was such an intelligent man, but the last 5 years of his life, he was living in cardboard boxes and living in skips. You know, one night, these kids set fire to the skip, and Paul used to sleep in his skip behind Bourne Lane Library for like weeks on end. And basically, they tried to kill him. If Sykes had been in there, he'd have been dead.
Yeah.
You know, he was drowning in a lake in Wakefield, and the police saved him. They said, "You bastard, if we'd have known it was you, we'd have left you." Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, I've just interviewed, I can't name him, but he's retired now. He was the top chief of police, and I couldn't even believe he'd spoke to me. And I've got like a 20-page chapter, Jim. I'll send you a copy.
Yeah.
And you know, he said, he basically said, Paul Sykes in his life had something like 231 convictions. So he you know, people say, have you heard the rumour he was a rapist and he was a nonce and all this?
Yeah,
I've spoke, I'm just establishing facts, right? I spoke to this police officer, and, you know, Brian Cockrell's been in prison, and the screws have been, oh yeah, Sykes used to rape him and all this. If you don't behave, I'll put Sykes and Delroy Showers in with you. And he said, listen, we've seen is pretty impressive. 231 DBS check, whatever you want to call it, is protection. You know, is can be released until 60 years after he's dead. So I've only got another 47 years to go. But
I'll tell you the truth. About
yeah, but he said to me, listen, I've seen everything that he was convicted for, robberies, assaults, but never ever was he convicted of any sex offences. So that's the truth. I'm not here to pretend he was a nice guy. He wasn't, but I'm just establishing a fact.
Yeah.
He was no more of a sex offender than you. And I seen your picture the day. And,
well, I've actually got an Ask Sex Offenders Luke today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could procure young people with dress like this.
You know, he may hung around with Jimmy Savile. And
you know.
Listen, I've been in prison, right, to visit his son. And he said to me, listen, if our dad was here now, he used to admit I have sex with men. You know, it's quite astonishing, really, because the biggest sentence Paul Sykes ever done was 7 years.
Yeah.
And I think he'd done 5 years of that. But basically, John Spence, he said to me, and John was basically the reason why he's got his pro license. And he said, you know, people would think he was, and he'd go on the landing. And even Peter Fury said to me, he said, you know what, he would have sex with anyone in prison. And did he manipulate people into sex? Yeah, of course he did. But did he actually drag them in a cell like a caveman and rape them? No, you know, I spoke to Chris Lbry, who lived next door to him for 3 years. And he said to me, no matter how hard you are, you just do not get away with doing things like that in prison.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a really disturbing story, but it's true. John Spence, he said to me, Paul used to tell him, it's really bad. But
this show's terrible, so it'll be okay.
When he used to have sex with men, he used to put page 3 on the back.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Actually, not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's Paul Sykes used to, and he would just tell people he didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He just was open about it. He'd be like, I don't give a, you know. So what? And he never did it outside. But it was just something he had to do in prison. And
I'd put the Wigan Evening Post on the back, but it's not worth a fuck.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. But it is. So he basically wasn't gay as such. He just needed this. He had sexual urges, and because he was in prison, he just can't. Outside prison, did he also? Was he just bisexual in general, or is it just a prison kind of?
I've spoke to people, and Paul Sykes would sexually. The end of his life, he'd make sexual advances to people, but he couldn't. He wasn't like that. You know, alcohol was his god.
Yeah.
You know, he had arthritis. He was fucked. He could hardly walk.
Is that? Do you think the alcohol exacerbated all his illnesses because
He had everything. He had everything. He had bad diabetes. You know, he would literally walk with. He didn't have any sexual urges, but he would often say to people, "Here, you, give us a wank," and you know,
like me,
yeah, just like 19-year-old young lads in the street. Just be like,
"Come
here, you, give us a blowjob and all this." But that was his sense of humour.
Yeah.
It was more for the shock value.
Yeah.
But yeah, people would beat him up, and he never made a statement to the police ever. You know, and he was really beat up. 2006, got a broken arm, really kicked the shit out of. And the police were like, "Oh, tell us who's done it, Paul." And he's like, "No, I fell down the stairs." And they were like, "Must have been big stairs." And he's like, "Yeah, it was the ones at Whitby, 99 steps." Do you know what I mean? It was there was a shop selling Whitby fish, and he'd walk in and he'd say, "How do you know these aren't Scarborough fish?" Just mental, one crazy, funny. You know, he'd represent himself in court and win.
Really, yeah, because he's intelligent, like.
Yeah, and you know, he'd even have the magistrates laughing, and they'd be like, "Behave, Paul. This isn't a laughing matter," you know. And he smashed his wife's window once. And when you see Paul Sykes at large, you see a big tree in the garden. So she kicked him out. He smashed the window, and he sat in his sat all the way through the interview. And he was that intelligent enough, or crazy. He said, "I didn't mean to smash the window. There was these two birds driving me crazy all day, going cuckoo, cuckoo." And then he just started doing the noises. And he actually tried to get away with saying, "I didn't mean to, I meant to shot the brick at the top of the tree." And it, you know what I mean? So yeah, he was. Listen, when that film's out next year, he'll be a household name. Yeah. And he's just, you know, loads of people often just know him as the guy who punched sharks. But yeah, he's going to be, when you watch it, you're just like, wow, what the fuck have I just watched? Sean Atwood the other week said to me, "Jamie, because I've been there for a year, watch this, Sean, watch this, you need to get it before I'm on the podcast." And he was like, wow, amazing. Do you know what I mean? It's like the best documentary ever. It's iconic, you know. It keeps getting took off YouTube because ITV have got wind that the film's going to happen next year. ITV can charge £400 per second.
Right.
So yeah, that's the reason why it keeps getting took off, and yeah, it's going to be massive.
I think he's got a good stance on his children though. But you know, it was a stern disciplinarian, wasn't it? When they've been thieving out of his jacket, like you get a.
But it was all set up. That
was it? Yeah. Was it not real? Like no.
No. I went to see Paul Jr. in prison about 4.5 years ago, and he got the voice like him. He looked like him. Did
he look like his dad? Yeah.
Double. And he said, you know, it was all set up. It was all staged. But
is that why the kids were laughing? Yeah.
But I don't want to, spoil it for anyone. But it was a bit like This Is Essex.
Yeah.
You know, I spoke to the tailor, Kenny, and even though that they were only in the shop for like 3 minutes, he said they were in my shop for 3 hours.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so he's walking, he's going, "Paul, great to see you." You know, but it's all made like he just walked in.
Yeah.
But basically, you know, Paul Sykes Jr. said to me, he said years later, he apologised. He said, "I shouldn't have done it," because he did go overboard and he really publicly humiliate his son. You know what I mean? There was no need to go that far when it was just made up. Sat there, call him a drip and knock out all the fumes from the glue and all that. Do you know what I mean?
That's the nature of television. Is very cruel. I mean, I was on a reality TV show a few years ago, and all I'm trying to illustrate with that point is, for the most part, it's all contrived and scripted. It's like, because reality per se is quite boring, so they have to kind of interject and cause rifts and things like that. But the television people don't really give a fuck, really, as long as they get good telly. Yeah. That's the prime kind of result.
I mean, Roger Greenwood and Nick Lord, what they're in now, they must be about 70, they're retired. But that's the biggest thing they've ever done. And, you know, that was the height of their career. And, you know, about 30 years this year it was. And I don't think they've ever done anything as big as that. You know, the YouTubers, millions and millions of, you know, the lads magazines, they always share it, and the memes and all this, and yeah, it's just unbelievable.
That footage they've got is what they're sat on is fucking gold.
Absolutely.
If that footage is worth a fortune. That footage, innit? You know.
Roger Greenwood told me 5 years ago. He said, "I've got it in my house." He said, "If you come to my house, I'll show you it." North York, Otley, Ilkley, or wherever he lives. But he said, "I'll never release it." But
have you never been tempted to just go and watch yet?
No,
do you think it's too much? What?
I don't know. Maybe one day. But he said he's got even more crazy footage of him.
Do you just think like to be frustrating the fact that you could see it and not help share it with the world?
You know, or maybe I should go in his house with a hidden camera or something.
It's like going to a lap dancer, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, she gets all the stuff out and then you have to go home after a buzz or something like that.
Do you know what I mean? But
disappointed kind of.
I don't know. Maybe next year when the film and the documentary comes out. Listen, he might be tempted because
Money.
I'd dread to think of how much that'd be worth.
Yeah. So you publish your own Sweet Agony, Paul's book?
Yeah, we Paul Sykes sold the rights about years after it was released, and yeah, we basically, it's Paul. He'd I do know the figure actually. He sold it for I think about £1,500, and yeah, so he gave up his rights to it. I know I've been threatened to be sued, but I've seen the paperwork.
So it's basically nobody owned it.
Warcry, we own it now.
But yeah.
So obviously this is why Western Edge come to us and said, look, because they found out, that they come to us, they tracked us down.
Yeah.
They basically tracked, said, are you Jamie Boyle's blah, 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 we want to buy this. We get 2.5% of what the film goes on to do.
Right.
So I think 2.5% of what the film costs, so 2 million, so 2.5. But I think predominantly where the money would be is, there's 5 books written on Paul Sykes, and we own all 5. So if anyone wants to learn more about him, you've got to come to us. And there's people out there now making songs about him. People are, his family are saying, "Oh, well, we want to write a book," and I'd love to see them write a book.
Yeah.
I'd love. Kath, his wife, was like, "No, I'm gonna take it to my grave. Never gonna write it." Paul did have another book he'd done, called "The Leopards of Mablethorpe" or something like that.
Was that a novel rather than
Yeah. But she's got it allegedly.
She won't release it.
No. I doubt, to be honest. I don't think it was finished. I spoke to one of his best mates, and he was writing a book before he died. Loads of papers, scribble and all that. Kath apparently has them as well, and she said to me, we'll never release them. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's it's
quite a tragedy. There's all this kind of stuff.
It is, because
they make a fortune as well. I don't know what financial position they're in, but you know what I mean. It's a bankable thing. Normally, I get people have been asking questions. Yeah. Okay, we're asking a few questions from the floor. Bear with me. So, Bode, hello Bode, asks, is it true that Paul Sykes' sister tried to contact him via a medium and he came through giving the medium loads of abuse?
Yes. Paul's sister came to stay with me for a few days. Met her a few times. And she went to this medium night. Forgot who it was, I didn't know. So basically this woman, she had an Indian spiritualist, and she said, I've got this man. I've got this really big gorilla of a man, dark hair. And he's so strong, and he's trying to get through. And basically, Paul's sister paid for it. But she said, all what he's sending me through is abuse. I don't want to take your money because I can't repeat what he's telling me. And then she said, there's a pint of lager there. And he said, he's making me trying to drink this pint of lager. So that is the true story. So that was Paul Sykes.
And this medium knew nothing about Paul Sykes?
Didn't know, have any idea. And that was Paul Sykes coming back to abuse his little sister in death, as he did in life.
So wherever he is in the grand ether or the next dimension,
she said, one of the things she did say, she said, "Oh, it's my brother. Where is he? Is he up there or down there?" And the exact words the spiritualist told her was, "His ass is certainly burning."
Yeah.
So that's exactly.
Do you think he was a bully?
Oh, absolutely, 1,000,000%, of course.
It wasn't like other men who were like fair. They'd only fight if you crossed them, kind of thing. He'd just pick on people.
Excuse me.
No problem.
He did some monstrous things. Anywhere in prison, you know, he'd have to go and fight the big man. Him and Lee Duffy nearly come to. They had nearly a few fights. There was a guy, Fred the Head Mills from Newcastle, and him and he was the only guy in Durham. He was a big fight. He'd had fights with Roy Shaw and everything, and he just basically. He was kept in the block for most of his time. He wouldn't listen to their music. He'd listen to like plays. He'd listen to cricket matches. He wouldn't read the Sun or the Star. He'd say he would read the Guardian and the Telegraph, because he used to say he was above all that shit. He used to make his kids eat liver because apparently it's good for the brain. I've never met him. Well, I've never met him, but you know, if I'd have seen that documentary in 2007, I'd have been to Wakefield and I'd have probably brought him home, tried to clean him up, and said to the wife, "This is Paul eating livers now." Do you know what I mean? It's like, that'd have been without a doubt. I'd have done that.
Do you feel like because you've spent so much time around him and and everybody that was close to him, you've interviewed, and do you actually feel you know him? In a sense.
He's a true story. I never put it in the book because it sounds ludicrous and absurd. But I'm going to tell you, and if you don't believe it, then I'm not really bothered.
We're open-minded here.
But anyway, Paul Sykes' sister came to stay with me. So then she went, November 2015, and things started happening in the house. Like a boxing bell would go ding ding. I don't even have a bell in the house. The bin lid just go bang. Glasses, honestly, in my son's life, I've seen a glass go like that. So Kay used to message me saying, "Oh, Paul's still living in your house," and I had to get my house blessed, cleansed.
Really, yeah.
And then once a priest come in and got rid of Paul Sykes, nothing ever happened. But that's true. And also, when I've written the first book, Unfinished Agony, I used to be typing and think what you want. My keyboard would just go mental, like poltergeist. So, Paul Sykes came to live in my house for a bit.
But he should be pleased, really, because
that's unbelievable. I didn't put that in because that probably would have killed my credibility as an author.
Yeah, people think he bullshit at
You barmy bastard, shut up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but I'm probably going to put it in this fan agony. Do you know what I mean? It's, and that happened. Do you know what I mean? It's like that, a glass one day just went. And I looked at the wife and I was like, have we just fucking seen that? Do you know what I mean? It was mental.
Nothing's beyond the door in this. I used to drink my own urine, and I've also took frog poison. So on this show kind of thing, that is like a really kind of mild admission, kind of the people we've had on here kind of thing. But it's very interesting. No, I've got another question. It's a stupid name. I think he spoke to Brian last week. I think he's a stalker, this fella. It's called Multiple Joe 157. Why was Sykes in Africa, and what did he get up to over there? It was over there boxing, wasn't it?
He went to Lagos when he went outside the Koi Hotel. I bought this off a kid, and it's worth a lot of money, and it's beautiful. Don't you go with Japanese plastic and shit, like you said. Anyway, but you know what? He did travel the world. This was 1985. He was in Russia. He was in Moscow. This thing, the thing with swimming with sharks was he ran up a bill, £16,000 in this millionaire's hotel. So he done one, and as he was swimming, he thought the police were shooting at him, and he turned round, and it was sharks, like baby sharks, but they were snapping at him, they were biting him. So they did turn around, and he just punched a few. So that actually did happen. I've spoke to people, and people think it's a lot of bullshit, but that man done so much in such a short space. And people saw he swam the Straits of Johor. Listen, the Straits of Johor is only 0.6 of a mile.
Right.
Paul Sykes could swim. Swim for miles. He was a phenomenal swimmer. He saved someone's life. It was in the Blackpool paper in about 1973, 94. He was a lifeguard. He's probably maybe the best swimmer that ever lived. He was just a freak. So, that's to answer that story. He did go all over the place, downed out on. A lot of people used to give him money, and you know, he'd just go and just shoot off for months on end.
Do you think he is actually the only man to swim the straits of Zohar in the history of mankind?
Do you know, it's funny because if you go to Google, I'll send you it tonight.
Yeah.
If you go on Google Wikipedia, right, sounds like a lie, but it's not. It says, the Straits of Johor is not shark infested, but none of the locals go paddling. That's on Wikipedia, if anyone wants to Google it now. And yeah, he, without question, he turned up, got the other side and he was green. He was like the Jolly Green Giant.
Right.
But yeah, there were so many amazing things he'd done. And people think, oh, bullshit, just some old pisshead. You know, he beat Roy Shaw twice, which is one of your questions, I'll tell you. And in 2000 or 99, I think it was, when Kate Cray was doing Hard Bastards, he was fuming because Roy Shaw was on there, and he was in the pub shouting, how could, fuck, he's not, I battered him twice in Hull prison. And he certainly did so many things. You know, I spoke to a prison officer the other week, and he said he's about 90 now, lives in Hull. And he said he's the most, you know, I've met. Sykesy was never a back jumper, whatever that means. He would never, you know, some screws would assault the people that assault him. Sykes liked you in front of you for a fight.
Yeah, square on.
And he was just a one-off. And anyone who's met him talks about it like they've seen the Abominable Snowman or Bigfoot or something. You know what I mean? He was just, everyone remembers meeting Paul Sykes.
Do you think you say he's got quite a few celebrity admirers like Robin Williams and Ricky Gervais? You say.
Jamie Carragher probably talks about him on. Who's that guy? The comedian Jack Whitehall,
Yeah.
He said you meet a different Paul Sykes every time you go on the Wetherspoons.
Yeah.
You know, I've met some boxers like Isham Pickering, Wayne Alexander, Michael Jennings, and you know, often people just, you know, I got a phone call about 4 months ago. Now, have you seen Snatch?
Yeah.
Do you know Gorgeous George, the big bald one?
Yeah.
Lovely guy. He's called Adam Fogarty. So he rang me on Facebook, and I was thinking,
is he a boxer?
Yeah, he's from Huddersfield. He was a heavyweight, then he was a rugby player. Now he's in films with Brad Pitt and Robert De Niro. And he rang me up just to talk about Brian Cockrell, Lee Duffy, and Paul Sykes. Because obviously he met Paul Sykes growing up boxing, Huddersfield, Tommy Miller. You know, and Sykes. There's one guy called Jason Pretty Boy Barker.
Okay.
And they were just going to go and box at Ellen Road. 1992, Henry Wharton and all them were on. And he said I was warming up, and all of a sudden I just seen these security guards just disappearing. And then I seen this big guy, and everyone just, fucking Paul Sykes. And he walked up and he was like, are you a fighter? He went, I'd rather fuck you than fight you. And he's like, whoa, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And he just caused chaos everywhere he went.
Yeah.
He ended up getting in the ring that night because there was a lot of... Henry Wharton is a fighter who has a lot of travellers. And he brings, you know, I was expecting trouble in the crowd with all these gypsies and all that. And Paul Sykes got in the ring, 1992, drunk as a lord, and just was like, I'll fight you all. And the police said, listen, he made our job twice as hard that night.
Was he in good nick then? Well, could he have still done a bit? Or was he
no, well, he probably, it was 1992. If anyone has read my book, Unfinished Agony, Nick Manners knocked him out just before he boxed.
Okay. Yeah.
That was that night. And he was incredibly drunk. John Spencer, it was the last time I ever seen him. And even though they were really close friends, he said to his brother Tony, oh, fucking hell, don't let him see me.
Yeah,
you know, because John was a really highly successful businessman, but he said, I was on a business table with like all millionaires, and they wouldn't have appreciated what he was doing. Do you know what I mean? He'd just get in company and start eating a glass or smashing pint glasses over his head just fucking bonkers.
Would he turn on his friends when he was drunk, or his associates? He'd just turn on anybody?
Yeah, he's. I spoke to a number of friends, and he's ended up hitting him, and the next day he hasn't remembered anything about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And he was just. like this one guy, he was around his house, and he was smoking a joint, drinking beer, special brew, 9%. And his mate said, "Oh, I put some of these acids." And Paul went, "Let's have a look." Seen it and just grabbed it out of his hand and took them. So he was like, "Oh, I'm going to go in a minute." He said, "I'm with Paul Sykes, who was drunk, stoned, and he's going to be off his head in a minute." Do you know what I mean? And he took all drugs, took heroin. Didn't smoke or inject it, but he was smoking in a joint. Speed. Paul Sykes Jr. said to me, "My dad had a bash of everything." Prescription drugs he was really bad on. So his drink, the drugs were just as much of a big part as drink as well.
Did he end up living in a squat with his son? I mean, did they both end up living in a squat together?
He had like a bed sitting there. Obviously, Paul Sykes has 8 kids I know of, right?
Yeah.
And 2 were in prison now doing life.
Murder?
Murdered. And after 2004, June 2004, Paul washed his hands with the lad who, Paul Jr., who stabbed someone for 50 pence for 33 times.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, he said, "I fought all my life with these. He's been a coward." So he never ever spoke to his son ever again. His son used to write to him. And he disowned him after that day.
Yeah, because he was a cowardly, that kind of thing. But what's the relationship like? What is other 2 sons like that who were laughed off? What were they similar situations?
There's one called Michael Sharp, and I don't know whether you've seen Strange Ways, the documentary, which was out in 2011. It's on YouTube.
Was that with that what was he called in it?
Michael Sharp.
No, there was who was that? Somebody went viral like that about my belt.
David Charlton.
Yeah. Is that I'll fucking belt you.
Yeah. Well, if you watch that, the big bald weightlifter is Paul Sykes' son.
All right, yeah.
And
David Charlton.
He got 27 years for kidnapping someone. He appealed and he got 25 years. He's got 12 years. So he's done 12 years. So he's got another, 12 years. Take off 25 years.
Is he his dad's lad? Is he a fighter as well?
Yeah, he's a monster. Charles Bronson said to me, I seen him across the yard, and he was like looking at his dad 40 years ago.
So you met Charles Bronson? Have you spoken to Charles Bronson?
I spoke to him. He's written me letters and all that, but he reads my books, Charlie. He said my books are great, but my front covers are shite. But I just took that as Charlie wanting to...
do a bit for you.
Yeah, but he written me a really bad letter one day saying, because someone in the book said that, I think it was Paul Sykes' son, said Charles Bronson wasn't a patch on our dad, he couldn't lace his boots. So Charlie sent me a letter full of fuck, and I said, well, what master, but it's not me. I don't know him. Do you know what I mean? I can only dictaphone, record him and type what people tell me. He sent me a few letters afterwards, being all right, but I think he understood. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's always someone gonna get upset about something when you're doing true crime.
Who would you have put your money on, or would you not like to say between Bronson and Sykes in the pond?
Well, I know someone. I won't mention his name, but he was in prison, and he was in prison with Paul Sykes, Charles Bronson and Fred Lowe. And basically, this is what he's told me. He said I was there. He said Charles was bullying Fred Lowe. So Paul Sykes went, "Here you," to Bronson. "Fucking stare at that wall now, and if you move, I'm going to bray you," and all this. So he had Bronson staring at this wall for half an hour. Right. This man doesn't just strike me as a bullshitter. So he was in prison with them both, and he's told me that story.
Yeah.
Paul Sykes, I spoke to Alan Lord, who was the Strange Ways riots, and he was in prison. He was in prison with Sykes in 1982, and he was winning all the weightlifting things, and he said you didn't fuck with him. But Sykes was clever enough, just because he could fight, there's people in there 10 stone would stab you to death. They're never going to get out and see the light of day. So, there was a lot of dangerous people in there. But I think probably Sykes is probably your ultimate hard man. He was really bad to the core, nasty with it. And, people in prison, he was just a whirlwind of chaos. And he was in the block he was just too for everyone's protection. Do you know what I mean? So he was just the ultimate bad guy.
Right, we've got some more questions from Multiple Joy. He must be one of them bored people in his mother's back room, like, you know, with some jammy dodgers.
Someone messaged me the other day actually saying I look like I need a wash.
Oh, it was John Bennett. He said,
"Can you ask Jamie when was the last time he had a bath?"
So it said questions for Jamie Boyle, and John Bennett said, "When did you last have a bath, Jamie?" But we have a live community, and we've got filtered all the knobheads out. But John, do you know, like, you keep a pet knobhead?
Yeah.
Because sometimes he's like Buddha with his profound things, but he didn't mean anything by it.
No, I don't. Listen, I get people messaging me saying they're praying I get cancer and I hope I die of AIDS. So John Bennett, no, listen, mate, that's one of the nicest things some people say to me.
But basically, you know, he meant no harm by it, kind of thing. He's all right. He's a bit puddled, but it's a Wigan word for that, just tapped in the head, kind of thing. But he's all right. But there you go, John Bennett. I want to donate to Colin now because you've got a mention in the show, kind of thing. Multiple Joe, the jammy dodgy kid, has asked, what happened to Wendy and Kath?
Paul Sykes had 3 wives. He married Pauline, 1973 or 74. They met in Blackpool. She bought a camera off him for £60. It was one of these, like, you know, you see this amazing camera and you buy and it looks shit. Yeah. Paul Sykes was the head of the complaints department. So this lovely Pauline...
Did he have a job then? Was he
he was a lifeguard. He was working in the Blackpool markets, auctions and that kind of thing. So Pauline's my good friend. I've been to stay with her a few times. She's, you know, outright in Paul Sykes and a lovely husband, Kevin. I've been to stay with them twice, 3 nights, so I spent 6 nights with her. And Pauline was, "He like you cheeky bastard, give me my money." And he basically said to her, "I'll give you your money back if you go on a date with me." So they were together 4 months, ran away to Brighton to get married, and but Paul was wanted. So rather than keep his head down, they stayed with a couple, and Paul strangled their cat. So basically, the next day, the police come. So it doesn't take Einstein to work out who dressed him up. Pauline, in the book Sweet Agony, Paul says a lot of lies, like she come in done in prison with a knife and all that. And I've been in a lot of prisons. You just can't do that. You know, in the book, where he says Mick Sellers' wife come onto him, lovely woman called Janet Sellers. It was all lies, complete. So there's a lot of lies in that book, you know, to make it fabricated to make the book look good. So basically, so then they met these two school girls when Paul was about 30, Wendy and Kath. Seen them both at the same time. He married Wendy about 1980 or 81. Stayed with her. That's where they had a son, Michael Sharp. She left him when he was in prison, mid-80s. So when he got out, that was when he got married Kath.
Okay.
Stayed with Kath, left him back end of the 90s, and then his dad died, and then his mum died in the space of 12 weeks. Right. So his wife left him, his mum and dad left him. Kay got all the money for the house. He didn't get a bean. He was barred from their own funerals. He was just sat walking around with a kind of special brew. Police were there to keep him away. So Wendy, she's just recovered from cancer. Right. She's a really nice woman apparently. And you know, he basically, sometimes Paul would come in from nightclubs and come home with lesbians expecting them to have threesomes and all that. And you know, Kath has been quite vocal saying he never beat me up and all this. When I spoke to neighbours across the road, and they've been like, every week Kath would run in the house phoning the police. Do you know what I mean? And she got rid of him. And he had an injunction to keep away and all this, and so you know, the 3 wives, they didn't have a nice life.
He was drunk on that documentary when Lbry shows his marrying him in the house, wasn't he? Like, you know what I mean? It caused a scene on there, isn't it, kind of thing.
Do you know what, Jimmy? If you ever get married, your wedding needs to be like that.
Nobody will go near me with the fucking
it's funny
barge,
because,
I'll be at house drunk on my own, just crying.
Yeah, it's or you could marry yourself.
I wouldn't fucking do that, to be honest with you.
But anyway, I'm in Wakefield a lot, quite familiar with the place, and the film director said, look, can you get into Paul's house? Because we might need to film in there, whatever. So I went in the house, to where I was really starstruck. I was a bit like, wow. And I was sat in the back garden where he'd done...
With the shark thing,
yeah. When I was in the kitchen, I had to stop myself from saying, what are these lights doing on?
Family, on the family patch.
I walked in the front room and I was sat like watching the wedding playing out. Do you know what I mean? So it was like unbelievable. I meet a lot of people, a lot of famous people, infamous people over the years, and that's probably been the only time I've really kind of been just like.
Does Kath still live there?
No, she's moved out Normanton, I think now. She just lives on just outside of Wakefield, but she's about 57, 58 now.
Right.
She's went on to get married and have more kids. She's still about.
Yeah, fair play. He's got some more questions, this fella. How did he become so well known everywhere when he spent most of his time locked up? Is that basically the Paul Sykes at Large, the documentary?
Yeah, Paul Sykes at Large come out December the 4th, 1990. It's a shame actually because YouTube didn't come on till November 2006, which is about 5 months before Paul Sykes died. So if YouTube was about when Paul Sykes, tourists would have come all over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've met people. One messaged me from Kent and Manchester, Derby. And they've told me they've drove to Wakefield. That's what I did at the start. Do you know what I mean? And everybody, the boxing scene knew him. He was a god in prison. He was like royalty. So he was in prison. He was bigger in prison than he was on the out.
Yeah.
But Wakefield, when he was out, he was debt collected and all this, and the city of Wakefield, the police said we would just be that busy. He literally kept them in a job. That's what they said to me. That man kept us in a job. I spoke to the top ranking Wakefield police officer, and he said I often go to policeman's dues in the bar, and he said every single year, he said, I remember that time you arrested Sykesy. Remember the time you were rolling on the floor with him? Do you remember that time 7 of us had him in a body belt and all this? And, all the time a Sykesy story comes up. He said to me, he said, in my 30 years of my police career, I never met anybody like him. He was the ultimate bad guy. He said, I meet bad guys, some leads, and they're like, do you know who I am? And he said, that was never Paul Sykes. He said, you knew Paul Sykes because you fucking knew about him. And his reputation, he was just, a one-off.
Yeah, there'll never be another Paul
No,
Sykes,
never.
will there? Ian Frost asked, does he know Pretty Boy Shaw? But we've covered that because he beat him up twice. So Ian, that's your question.
Yeah, they had 2 fights. I spoke to 2 people who were there. Lbry Showers was there. And I spoke to a screw. There was one of the 7 or 8. There was like a dozen people breaking it up. And Lbry said to me, he said the first fight lasted about 13 seconds. Then they had another fight. And one of my friends was at an evening with Roy Shaw. And this was in Sheffield about 2003, 2005 time. And they were doing questions. And they said, what about Paul Sykes? And Joey Pal stood up and he was like, oh, what a question. And Roy Shaw stood up and he just said, Sykesy was too big for me. So that did happen. Basically, Roy Shaw was a monster. I've done a book on him. He kicked his way out of a prison cell door on a few times. You've seen his eyes. He's just one crazy bastard.
And
it just shows what type of monster Paul Sykes was.
He certainly was, kind of thing. But Padge Guitar, hello Padge, has asked, but we've kind of covered this as well, how Dennis Flint made his money, and that was like through buying cars.
Yeah, he would, trying to think when Dennis was born, about the 30s. So he made his money 50s and 60s, like cars, Hong Kong, Singapore, and he just made, apparently, like his family said to me, he was never any kind of criminal. The police told me, they said, we used to be outside at Dennis's house and think, this is what they said to me, they said, he's the one we want. And this young police officer was like, who is he? And he said, basically, he's the Paul Sykes of the business world. Dennis was robbed a couple of years before he died. These masked men went in his house, put guns on him. So for the rest of his days, Dennis had all these big, massive arsenals of guns waiting for people. And he's like, he said, the bastard's come back, I'm going to shoot him. Do you know what I mean? He was one unbelievable character, Dennis Flint. He was just a really, really clever man. He was the big womanizer, and he didn't give a shit. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this woman said to me, I was going out with Paul Sykes, I think it was the 70s, in a nightclub in Rooftop Gardens in Wakefield, and Dennis would come in with his medallion and his tan, and he'd be like, hiya darling, put notes in a pocket and try and get her back to his house for orgies and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't care for anyone, Dennis.
So he's been to orgies, but anything goes with Dennis.
Yeah, he had, he fell in love actually with a lady just before he died, or a few years before he died. And believe it or not, he actually went to live on a council estate in Wakefield, so he'd give that big house up. And
that's nuts.
Yeah, but he was that much in love with her. But he basically spent his days abroad. He died in, where was it he died? He died abroad on a yacht, drinking every day.
Right, so he died in a happy kind of...
Yeah, he really enjoyed himself. He lived like a king.
Fair play. Roger King, hello Roger King. Is it true that Paul Sykes... That's a different show altogether. Paul Sykes had a kid in Africa.
I've spoke to... Paul Sykes has 8 sons I know of. I've spoke to about 3 and maybe 4. And he said to me, we don't know. There's rumours. He's supposed to have kids all over Africa, everywhere. But the end number of how many kids he actually had will never ever be known.
So there's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, without a doubt. He was, what was it? One night, he slept with 5 women in one night. He was just highly sexed. Do you know what I mean? He was just, yeah. Do you know? He was like that for most of, well, certainly up until about the last 10 years of his life.
If you could meet Paul Sykes, what would you ask him?
I don't. Oh God. I've never been as interested as anybody in my entire life. It'd be great to study. Like Attenborough studies the monkeys, and
yeah.
I speak to several retired Wakefield police officers, and they said to me, we used to be in awe of him. He'd be like massive hands, and even when he was an old tramp, he said we never want to get windmilled by him. He's one person we just didn't want to be punched.
Yeah.
He said I wanted my staff to go home on a night. He was so strong. He was just so wild and ferocious, and many times the police said to me, they said, for some reason we used to send the women to him because he used to like the underdog. Where if we sent 12 lads out to Paul Sykes, he'd see that as a direct challenge. It was like the gorillas. You can't stare at a gorilla.
Yeah.
So, Paul Sykes would think nothing, go, right lads, do you know what I mean? And we'd eventually get him, but the first 3 or 4 would end up with broken jaws, fractured cheekbones. He's John L. Gardner said to me, he said when he hit me, He said he really curled my toes. He said he fucking couldn't have it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, when you see him outside, that there's that picture of him as a tramp outside. Is it outside the court?
It was outside Wakefield and Pontefract Magistrates, and that was the back end of 2004. So he lived for like another 2.5 years.
Well, the size of his hand,
Yeah.
he does that, doesn't he? You can see the size of his hand, that shovels.
That picture to me epitomises everything about Paul Sykes, because I spoke to the guy who took that picture. He's a reporter, and he said he was hiding, and what he was doing jazz hands, going da-da, do you know what I mean? And he loved the attention, and one of his best friends said to me, he said, if Sykesy knew that there was people now writing books about him, the exact words to me was, he said he'd laugh his fucking cock off. And Kenny, the old tailor, he's still alive, he's about 90 now, and he said Paul would come in my shop and he'd say, Kenny, in years to come when I'm dead, people are going to write books about me. So here we are, do you know what I mean? He knew.
He kind of, and here we are today still discussing him kind of thing. I have a question for you. Do you think Paul Sykes would wear a mask going into Tesco, or do you think he would have? Do you think he wouldn't fucking have a bear of it?
Paul Sykes lived his life by his own rules.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said, I dug a quote out from him from 1990, and he said, God made me, didn't make me 6'3" to take orders from little bastards. He said, I live by my own rules. I've got my own set of rules in life, and I live from. And he did, you know, even when he was a tramp, you know, I used to say at the police, I know why I'm getting my good hardens. You know, it's just, he would never make a statement. You know, he said it's for what I've done in life, and I've just got to deal with it and crack on. And so he knew he was facing his own karma.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So he said, I've belted a few people. I know a few things about broken jaws, and there was a family from Wakefield who really kicked the shit out of him not far before he died, and but he'd beat their dads up, he'd beat their granddads up, and all his young kids used to come and say, I've just battered Paul Sykes.
Yeah.
He didn't batter Paul Sykes. The only man to ever beat Paul Sykes in his prime was Terry Mitchell from Leeds.
Yeah.
You know, and anyone who beat Paul Sykes after Millennium was just taking liberties with an old man. A vulnerable old man who, you know, he couldn't open cans, his hands were knackered of the arthritis.
Punching, he is a punching.
You know, he, you know, there's a saying, if I've told you a million times, stop exaggerating. Paul Sykes, right, if he'd done any wrong in life, he got his just desserts 1,000 times over. He had a horrific ending, you know, and he died like a dog.
Do you think he faced his karma for everything? He atoned for his sins?
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
He knew that, and you know, I used to always say I'm gonna die. And before he slipped into a coma for 6 days and then died, he was in bed, hospital bed, and he said to Kath and Kay, he said, I'm dying. He said, and it's got me, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? So he knew he was going to die.
Yeah.
You know, he knew, and you know, he was on the verge. He knew he was going to be having a date with the Grim Reaper very soon.
Yeah. So what have you got going on? When is your book? You've got the 3 books. When is Final Agony coming out?
It's coming out August the 7th on the Kindle. So it'll be out September the 7th, paperback. That's when I'll send you a copy.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you Further Agony tomorrow.
Thank you.
I've signed it for you. Just a bit hungover today, so
don't worry about it.
So basically, I'm going to send you that tomorrow, and then so you read Further Agony, Final Agony. You've read Sweet Agony, Unfinished Agony. I've got Once Upon a Time in Teesside, The Taxman, and The Duffer. No introductions needed. What else have I got? I'm doing Wildman's book. Do you know Sean Atwood?
Oh, is his mate writing a book? Yeah.
Right. In January, Sean obviously was a drug lord, and you know, Wildman would look after all the crystal meth, but do it in. He'd go missing for days. Would come home, no shoes, didn't even know where he'd been. Crazy guy, really nice guy as well. So that's, you know, they've got over 500,000 YouTube. So any of that, you know, Wildman's quite iconic. Got Gary Fairby, who's an unlicensed boxer. I'm going to do Train the Brian Cockle Way book and documentary next year. What else have I got? And I've got Roy Shaw, the unheard tapes. I've got 4.5 hours of Roy on tape, which has never ever been heard. So I'm going to put that into a book. And yeah, I've just got books.
You've got the Resurrection of Brian Cockrell book, and there's on
yeah,
Amazon Prime, the documentary.
Yeah, I'm going to send you that tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
The Resurrection of Brian Cockrell. His first book, The Taxman. Someone said to me, Brian's beaten 10 people up on every page. And I didn't want to go that route. And the thing with Brian Cockrell, and when I met him in September, I forget how many times I was threatened by Brian Cockrell. And I did a book on a guy, Brian's ex-partner. I won't name him, but he said a lot of derogatory things about Brian. So that's the only book out of my 17 where I put on the front, as told to Jamie Boyle. So I thought, I'm not having that fucker come along for me. So anyway, contacted him. I said, look, mate, I know I'm not your favourite person, but I'm just an author. Do you know what I mean? I'm just the delivery boy. And anyway, he come to my house for a couple of days, and I thought, this is a plot, this. He's going to come and kidnap me and kill me. And anyway, he didn't, which was a good start. And I said to him, I said, listen, we can do a book and you can pretend you weren't involved in the crack and all that, but my advice to you is, the first thing that comes out of people who don't like him are fucking crackhead. So when he's putting his hands up and saying, look, I've done wrong, I've made major mistakes, you're basically taking that away from saying, yeah, I am. Yeah. So yeah, he's been more than brutally honest, and he's basically put in the book, and it's a lot of, he's done talks, a lot of people message his page, which I'm admin on. I don't read the messages. I do sometimes see him, when Brian's busy, and I'll have a look, and people are like, oh, Brian, I'm on the gear. What can I do to get off it? Like Brian's got some kind of magic wand. We'll stop session on cocaine every week, battering. Middlesbrough's a really bad place at the minute for suicides, and it's because people are battering cocaine every weekend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The depression, I think.
Knackers the chemicals in the head up, doesn't it?
It's. I spoke to someone at Christmas from December to February. 28 young lads in Middlesbrough hung themselves in about 8 to 10 weeks. And it's it's all to do with the drugs. And he's been there. He's wore the t-shirt, and as he said last week, I've done my life, but if I can, his biggest regret is he should have been the world's strongest man, but he's not. But basically, he can say, right, I fucked up. But for anyone, 21-year-old kids out there who think it's cool to be Lee Duffy, Brian Cockrell, it's not, and he's lived through it. He's been shot, he's been stabbed, he's, all his baseball bats murdered, nearly been murdered. Yeah. And where's the glamour in that? Do you know what I mean? So he's out there now, and he's credit to him, he gets all the trolls as I do. But he's making a difference.
It's he's a good example of turning it around, because a lot of people, as Paul Sykes illustrates, and people of that nature don't end up in...
Well, look at Paul Sykes. He was 60. But when he died, he looked about 88. And he'd have only been 74 now. Look at Lee Duffy. He'd have been 55. He's been dead now longer than he's been alive. And he's pushing up flowers in Essence Cemetery. Where's the glamour in that? Do you know what I mean? He could have been a millionaire. Paul Sykes could have had his own security companies. I could have, if he'd have been alive, I'd have been touring Britain doing an evening whiffs. I'd have written 20 books on him. What a story. Do you know what I mean? And next year, when his film gets happened, I think that's when it'll really come out. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone who's read the book, watched his documentary, just being like, wow, what a character. Even the people who hate him said, I can't fucking stand him. But, whether they love him or whether he epitomises everything that stood for evil. Listen, Paul Sykes' name will never ever be forgot, certainly in this lifetime.
No.
And he's in what's the word? Mythological.
Mythological.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. We'll get there.
You know, he's down in folklore. Wakefield. He was Wakefield's baddest character, and you know, I don't know. Wakefield can't stand me. I get a lot of messages. Oh, you should have just left it be. And it wasn't my fault Paul Sykes existed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the bad things he was doing, I wasn't even born. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, you just leave it be. And, you know, anything that on the Wakefield forums, there's 10, 15 people messaging me, oh, just leave it be, you know, listen.
You always got to get that.
Do you know what I mean? Listen, you know, Jack the Ripper's fascinating. I'm a massive true crime.
Yeah.
You know, my clue's in the name. I am what I am. You know, why was Brian Cockrell the way he was? Why was Roy shot? You know, I like to understand. I don't glamorise him. But if anyone's read any of my books, there's why was that person behaved the way he did? And, you know, bad people are, you know, it's like, I would never write a boxing book again. One guy I really love, Josh Warrington, he's given me so much advice on the trolls. I met him 10 years ago before he was famous.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, Josh, if you watch, I love you, but, you know, when I've done the boxing books, have flopped because the people really want to listen to, oh, I've had a nice camp, you know, oh, I'm feeling really fit, or do people want to read about Brian Cockrell, Roy Shaw, Lee Duffy in the town of Middlesbrough, Paul Sykes, bumming people in prison allegedly, and all this. People want to understand. Do you know what I mean? When you go in any Waterstones and you ask them, what's your most popular genre, I don't know how to pronounce it, they'll tell you true crime. Do you know what I mean? And whether I'm about, or Bernard O'Mahony's about, Kate Cray's about, listen, people are fascinated with true crime. When Jack the Ripper's second victim, Annie Chapman, was murdered, the people in that house were charging a penny to come and have a look at where the blood was and all that stuff. Well, people have that fascination.
Is it Cromwell Street? They had to demolish the house where Fred West sold it. They had to demolish it because people were coming looking at the house.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's the kind of mental shit I'd do.
You know what I mean? It was Abbott Garden, me taking a flag home. You know what I mean?
You know, Sean Atwood said to me the week,
and stand on it eating crisp.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm fucking really weird. And do you know when I was young, the next couple of days, when like Lee Duffy died, I went down. I was 11-year-old on my BMX with my mates, just looking at the scene, and I'm just fucking weird. But
welcome home.
Yeah, but you know, it's I'd have done that. You know, I'd have went to Cromwell Street. We should go, Jimmy.
I might curl me or like and get Fred West out eating raw onions.
Yeah, well, I like Halloween. And
see, I thought it looked weird me if I keep on sick. The only reason I do these podcasts, I take them into Dole and say like I'm no better.
Yeah, but you know something when you say that, you've got to look at Fred West. You've got Fred's hairstyle.
I'm going for a Savile thing actually. A blonde, but you can write a book about me.
Do you know something? It's yeah, I mean, do you know someone went and nicked that sign? Do you know 23? I think it's in the Black Museum or something now, but
you can't say things like I'm joking.
Yeah. But do you know what? It's like
the Rainbow Museum.
Yeah, you know, it's some people are like that.
But
and I meet people, right? And the house is just full of craze.
Yeah.
And memorabilia, you know, and
my house actually looks like a serial killer's living room. If anybody's seen the live streams, kind of thing. But I think most human nature, there's something in us that kind of draws us towards the dark side, kind of thing. But I think the moral of the story is you can go two ways with it. I mean, if you do end up in a dark path, you can like turn your life around like Brian Cockrell has, or if not, you can just follow it to where it leads you, and it's not going to be a good ending. And I think the moral of the story with it all is kind of like, you know, just try not to be a dickhead, because one day it'll catch up with you. You know what I mean? But
it's you know, Paul Sykes a prime example, and you know, as I said, for any bad he'd ever done in life, he got paid back, and you know, I always like if you do good comes back on you, and years later, it's, you know, if you help someone, someone else will help you, and if you do bad, that comes on you as well. Like the Buddhist monks, they don't kill anything's bad, is because every negative action is a reaction, you know. But yeah, he got a bad time, and was it just his hair? I don't know. I think wherever he is now, he's getting judged.
He'll be abusing somebody, so he might be pissing on loaves in hell or something in a shop or something. But wherever you are, Paul Sykes, God bless you. Jamie, thank you very much for coming down. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, sir. Like you said, Jamie publishes Warcry Publishing. We're going to put links to all Jamie's books, the Final Agony, the Resurrection of Brian Cockrell.
I have my own Facebook page as well.
We'll link as
Jamie
much.
Boyle, author filmmaker, at Twitter at Jamie Boyle 10. I'm on Instagram, Jamie Boyle Books. So
we will link as many things as we can under the video for you. Thank you very much for watching again. Please subscribe to the channel. Please donate to Colin towards his Tesla kind of thing, because your donations save lives, and £2 a month can keep somebody in Ince in malt loaf kind of thing. Like this video and just be kind to each other, and don't go pissing on loaves in shops, because we don't really approve of it. Thanks very much.